And we are live. So, welcome everyone. You are watching the Intuitive XR chat today, not with a guest, with an external guest, but today you will get to know the team. So that is Lea Rabe and Yanzhao Pan and me, Marius Klug. And we are going to speak a little bit about our goals, our plans, our motivations, and yeah, what our research is all about. I think we should wait for a few more minutes because the attendance is probably starting slow these days. And I'll send a notification to the Discord server again.
All right.
Okay, so there are a few more people dropping in. Slowly but steadily, I mean, it's 5:02. It's probably very German that we start so strictly at exactly 5. Um, yeah, so that this is all a little bit different on Twitch. This is not a strict event, but on Twitch everyone just drops in and out every now and then. So I would say let's just start. And yeah, just maybe introduce ourselves a little bit. Maybe Lea, you want to start?
Yes, sure. So I've joined the group in the beginning of August, and before that, I did study psychology in my bachelor's, and afterwards I focused on human-machine interaction, where I got to know you, Marius, and I did my master thesis in your project. Yeah, then I left science for a bit and now came back in August to yeah, start my PhD in the group, and I'm very happy to be focusing on the development of empathic agents for VR. But I think about that we'll talk more later. So this is just like a very quick introduction.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And fun.
Yeah, hello everyone. So my name is Yanzhao Pan, and my bachelor study is about the automotive systems, and then I start my master study, which is the human factors in TU Berlin. Yeah, since 2020. And after that, so I did my master thesis with Marius, and that is how I know him. And after that, I spent 1 year doing intern in Tender Labs, which is a brain machine interface startup. And now I'm doing my PhD study in Technische Brandenburg Universität. So, yeah, basically that's it. And I think I can talk about my PhD topic later. So,
Great. Yeah, it's actually quite funny that both of you already did your master's thesis with me, but Lea, you did it 4 years ago. So that was quite the coincidence that you saw the job opening at the right time, that things worked out. Yeah, so that's how things go sometimes. Maybe a few words to myself actually. I don't know if I ever introduced myself properly to the Twitch viewership. So my name is Marius Klug. I did study cognitive science in Tübingen in Germany, both bachelor's and master's, and then I came to Berlin, where I did my PhD. That was focused actually on high density EEG analysis in combination together with other measures like eye tracking and motion. And I did have an actual content experiment that I wanted to analyze. The data, I think, was collected in 2018, and one of the persons collecting the data was actually Lea, and that never really got enough traction. The experiment itself didn't get published so far because I was too busy creating new analysis scripts, and in the end they were enough for a PhD, so now we can actually go back to the original experiment. So then I got my PhD last year. I think the official certificate actually this year in January, and now the group at Brandenburg Technische Universität in Cottbus, a little bit south of Berlin. So that group now consists of me as me, and then Lea and Pan as the PhD students. So I'm really happy to have this now, and quite frankly, it's still something that is hard to believe. I slowly get accustomed to it, but it's quite a funny feeling that the ideas that I had were so interesting also to other people, not only to myself, that they agreed that this would be worth pursuing. So that's really, really nice.
So did you have any vision when you started the group, like where you would like to go dig deeper, develop from your PhD?
From the PhD, actually, it's a little bit complicated. So I basically, the ideas that I have now put into action were already there 5 years ago. It's interesting. I just recently found, since I moved, I found an old notebook, a lab notebook from the first year in my stay at in Klaus's lab in Berlin, and I had a diary entry, so to speak, where I was talking about a very interesting. Actually, I was talking about reading Thorsten's dissertation. So I actually had read Thorsten's dissertation, and that was so interesting to me that I could not sleep. So I stayed awake until like 3 a.m. and I couldn't stop myself from reading Thorsten's dissertation. I think that's the nerdiest sentence that you could imagine. But it's true. It's true. And I had all these ideas already back then that you could do this with magic and VR, and this combination of VR and these physiological sensors could enable us to do things that are really unimaginable otherwise. So essentially, I did the PhD because of that vision, and the PhD is necessary because I now know much more about analyzing EEG, about what issues there are, about what contents you can actually, like what cognitive states you can measure with EEG or other data and so on. So it was really necessary. I couldn't have started doing, for example, the real virtual magic mod back then, but now I can with the knowledge that I have now. But the ideas are the same. So essentially, the PhD was more about post hoc analysis with high density wet EEG. Not very usable, but very much the best that we can do from a research perspective. And now it's all about bringing it into the real world in some way. And you actually thinking about it. So, when you saw that job opening, what did you think you could do with this PhD after like knowing me from your masters, and then having been working in industry outside of academia, and with your wish to come back, Yeah, it's really interesting actually. Like, what was your imagination at the time when you read that opening?
Well, that's a very good question. So I guess I always wanted to go back to science, and I really like what we did in my master thesis, like the connection of VR and EEG, because I think VR has just so much potential. And then remember that back then you told me about all your ideas with the RVM mod, and
Really, I did already.
yes, yeah, and how
That was
magic
2018, right?
could be like based on your brain activity basically. And I found this very, very interesting. It was like, wow, this is like a whole new sense you could add to a game with your brain that you've never experienced before. um, so I just was, I guess, genuinely interested in being part of that science and developing it further, because I've never like seen anything like it before. And I think it's a very promising path to just, yeah, walk on and explore. And yeah, I think it has very much potential. So I didn't see exactly my PhD inside of it that back then when I read the post, but it was like, wow, finally it's getting real, and I would like to contribute because I find it so fascinating. So yeah, I guess that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Nice. Very, very cool that that it worked out this way. Yeah. And maybe Pan, for you, that's also quite interesting because we've really never come back to it, because you've been kind of continuing from your masters in Xander Labs, working in Xander Labs, and then smoothly transitioning to the PhD. But actually, what was your vision, and has it changed since then? Since let's say after your masters to now to what you're doing now.
So my vision didn't change. So at the beginning, at when I met you, I was thinking about to develop some VR game using EEG data. But but at that time I was only thinking about to use the EEG, but not the eye tracking or heart rate or some other physiological measurements. Yeah, but yeah, it's quite a coincidence, I think, because um, y- so I came to Berlin in 2018, and at that time I was still study the automotive systems major, and then I think it was in 2019 that I attended a course in TU Berlin about the brain-machine interface, and that makes me very interested in this field. So I want to delve into this field, and I attended in some other courses about brain machine interface or psychology, neuroscience. And after that, I searched on the website of TU Berlin, and I found the major of human factor. So at that time, I know, so this major is not about the true brain machine interface field, but I think maybe I can just back up my knowledge bank to for my future study in this field, and I changed my major to human factor, and so it was a coincidence. I I attended in a seminar, a seminar by which is taught by Marius, and he told me he had a master thesis topic, and that was exactly what I want to do. So
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
remember the
yeah,
seminar. Yeah, you actually wrote a an essay instead of doing the presentation, and your essay
Yeah.
really stood out. So then I actually approached you and offered you a thesis. That's right. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. But before I changed my major, I didn't know you are there or there is this kind of topic.
Okay.
I'm just thinking about there could be helpful for me to learn some knowledge in the neuroscience. Yeah. But then I worked with you on my master thesis and in the startup, and then now with my PhD. So I'm quite lucky. Yeah.
No, I'm really happy that everything worked out so nicely. I see that we already have now 10 viewers, so welcome everyone to the chat. And maybe just to make this very clear, you are more than welcome to write questions whenever you have any, and we'll try to react to them as soon as we can. And if you are just interested in anything, feel free to ask. So since you both did the masters with the same data set actually, and even on almost the same topic, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your master's topics. Let's start with Lea because you are chronologically the first, and and you also did almost the groundwork that was necessary for Pan actually.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know. So maybe a little bit of background about the experiment. So people wore this EEG headsets. I don't know if our crowd knows what it is. So basically, you have a lot of electrodes on your head which measure this very tiny electrical currents that flow in your brain. And from those currents, you can not read your mind, but infer some kind of mental activity that is going on, like if you're properly awake or asleep, or if you're concentrating, or if you're surprised or making an error, like a lot of responses you can track. And in the experiment, people were wearing this VR headset, and there were just colorful balls flowing towards them, so spheres either of blue or yellow color, and you had to touch one color and leave the other ones out. And it was, we wanted to see basically in different conditions. So sometimes the color was very hard to distinguish, and sometimes it was very well distinguishable. How when you perceive a target, like a target is the sphere you want to touch, how your brain responds to that target while you're moving. And what you have to know is that an EEG is usually not done while movement. So because the electrical currents are so tiny that your muscular activity just is much stronger and you don't see it. And so we wanted to try out this new approach. And yeah, so we actually found some very nice potentials that like EEG patterns, it's called that way, that could really distinguish between targets and distractors. Like you could see when someone focused on a target sphere that it was different to a distractor sphere, and also between the condition it was different. So yeah, so it's nothing completely new in the sense of distinguishing targets and distractors. This is like a very common task, but in VR and in movement, and also like really people were looking around, moving their hands. This is like as a paradigm quite new for the whole field of cognitive psychology. Yeah, so I focused on this this special area, and I'm very interested to hear what Pan did afterwards with it. I had no idea.
Yeah, actually,
That's really funny, but let me quickly interrupt you for a second because I have a video of the
ah,
experiment,
yeah,
and
Ah,
I'll
perfect.
just briefly share my screen. and we can see the video on YouTube. Actually, I have it on YouTube. So can you see this now? Wait a second. I think this does not
Yes.
work at all. Okay, this I think my video now broke because WebEx is behaving differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that doesn't work. Then we need to stop that. Okay, this is not what I expected. Unfortunately, but I will send the link in the chat and then everyone can have a look. Give me 1 second. Okay. So that there's a link now in the chat where everyone can see that's a video of people of someone doing the experiment, and you can see the blue ball that is actually the marker for the eye tracker, which is normally not visible to the participant. So this was just for the video purpose, and you can see that it's a rather bland environment, just gray and some bubbles. But that's what you do if you want to really get down to the cognitive details in the end. So yeah, that was it's a little unfortunate, but it will work out. So if you're interested in that, check out the video. And now let's go back to Pan. Sorry for the interruption.
It's okay. Actually, my master thesis is in the same paradigm with Lea. So, but my task is to the classification of the targets and the non-targets, which are the blue ball and the yellow ball, based on the participants' EEG data, eye tracking, and the hand motion. During the it's to classify the intention. When the participant see that target, there might be some changes in their brain or in their pupil size or in their hand motion. So this could be used to identify the target. Yeah, and speak of the hand motion, we are not classify the target based on the motion of touch, but based on the motion, based on some small teeny movement of their hand when the participant see the target. So yeah, this is critical. And so I tried some different classifier. I tried shrinkage LDA, SVM, and EEG-net for the classification. Yeah, but unfortunately, the result is not so significant. But I mean, it's a binary classification, and we got the classification accuracy. I remember it about a little above 60%, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, basically that's it. And yeah, we think this classification accuracy is because there were too much artifacts in this experiment, and this may make the classifier biased. Yeah.
That and there were too many overlaps, so we had too many stimuli at the same time, and then it's difficult to find the difference. Which is actually, I want to emphasize that probably this is really important also to make clear what kind of really groundbreaking approaches the two of you used actually. Lea used the unfold method, which is a rather new toolbox by Benedikt Ehinger and Olaf Diemigen, which is able to statistically unfold the overlaps between events. So you have a fixation on a target, and 200 milliseconds afterwards you look already to the next target, but the measure that we take from the brain, let's say that goes 600 milliseconds or 700 milliseconds, and then that means that whatever you look at after the initial fixation is overlapping and interfering with what's happening in your brain already. And the unfold toolbox is able to statistically unfold that and try and trace back the original true signal for this event. And that only works afterwards. So that only works if you have the complete data and you just do it as a post hoc analysis. That was already really cool and very important. And then what you did, Pan, is the whole concept of the framework of intention classification is really something that is very rarely done. That's also why it's difficult to find literature on the field, because there is none, or there is not much at least. There are a few papers that did something very similar, but doing this in such a dynamic way, I think, has never been done. Literally no one on earth ever did that. So it's no wonder why it didn't work out. It's no problem. This happens. That's happening when you're doing things that you don't know what happens in the end. I think that
is the science.
Yeah, that is science. That is what science should be, and that is also why I think, if I remember correctly, Lea, your results were also not extremely convincing, but you could find some decent findings in the end. But we had wished for some more clear signals, if I remember correctly.
Well, I mean, I had rather clear signals in the predictability. So and the distinguishability.
Yeah.
So if you could very clearly distinguish target and distractor, the signal was very clear, and you could also see the difference to when the colors were almost the same. But for all the other conditions, we didn't see a result. So, for example, there were changes in speed, and also in the the rhythm, the spheres came towards you, and this was not represented in what I measured. But it's okay. I mean, it's a new paradigm, so I was happy to at least have something to talk about that was somehow, I don't know, significant or interpretable, which I think is already great. So we had no real expectations because there was no similar experiment.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that the distinguishability had a big impact for you was also reflected in Pan's results. So when it's hard to distinguish the targets from distractors, then it is really also difficult to measure that in the brain, right? Because you don't really have a clear signal. So this is probably not due to artifacts, but because it's actually more difficult to differentiate. And this is important also. So from a cognitive science perspective, if we are purely interested in the neuroergonomical assessment of situational awareness, that is a little bit unfortunate because we couldn't, we had troubles fitting our results in the original framework of situational awareness with the perception, comprehension, and projection. But from a perspective of interface design, right, that is very important. That is just a very solid and super interesting, important result. And also something else that we found with your results, Pan, was that the motion classifier worked very well in the predictable conditions. So if everything was rhythmical and didn't have a chaotic interference, then the hand behavior could already predict quite well whether the thing that you looked at was a target or a distractor. But the moment that it got more chaotic, this classifier broke down. So that's also super interesting, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of using a classifier that works because it has the highest accuracy in a certain condition, and then if you then try to ship an interface to an end user, or to maybe to people on our Discord now or something like that, and they try it out, and to them it doesn't work because they behave differently. So I think that's a super interesting and super important result, actually, from an interface design perspective. So yeah, that's a great summary of the neuroergonomics task that we investigated. I might add that we also had some quite interesting findings when we tried to predict the performance of the participants based on either the subjective questionnaires, like the NASA TLX workload questionnaire or the situation awareness questionnaire, or based on eye tracking and behavior. And our eye tracking model was quite good, surprisingly good. We had like a really high accuracy with that, something around 80%, or since it's a linear regression, we had the inverse, we had 20% unexplained variance, so that's loss in our model, which is quite low. So with human behavior data, you would normally have something in the range of at least 30 or 35%, and that's also what we found with the behavior, with the questionnaires, not with the behavior, but with the questionnaires. But with the behavior, it was quite good. So that's something that I'm also planning to submit at some point as a paper if there's some more free time left, which let's say soon.
I was just thinking that we were always talking about there is no such research out there. And I mean, the logical consequence would be to publish something.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite frankly, the results were disappointing at times to me back then, and that's why I never really pursued it. Also, all master students just went and did different things and didn't continue with the paper. So some of the master theses like yours could have been a paper, and then you went and worked somewhere else. But maybe we can come back to that now. So definitely we should for sure publish that. The results are quite interesting. The paradigm is solid, and it can lay the groundwork for some more research.
Yeah, I was thinking that irrespective of the results, I mean, it's something new, and I think the focus is mainly on the paradigm and the methods we used, so that other researchers can see what we tried out and then learn from possibly mistakes that we've made. So I think that would be cool, because I'm not sure what happened in the past 4 years, but yeah, I doubt that there is so much research with EEG and movement like we did it.
Yeah, I don't think so, no. We had a few more master students actually doing research with the same data set, and unfortunately most of the results didn't work out as I had planned. So that is really the pain of this experiment. And some of that was even very weird, because we used the same classifier as Torsten is using in his group, and we actually took their computer. You remember that, right? We took a separate computer which was theirs, and we put it there in our lab, and the results didn't work out. So I'm still not entirely sure if maybe we had an issue with the EEG, because that was even before using the VR. The data was already somehow not giving us what we would expect, let's say like that. Could be that it's a replication issue, a general replication issue, or it could be that we have an issue with our setup, and I don't know. I mean, in the end, you were probably more familiar with how the data analysis, data recording procedure worked than I was in the end. But for some reason, the data that we got didn't give us what we wished for. The eye tracking and motion data was quite clear, but the EEG, and we do have realistic EEG ERPs, for example, in your case, Lea, for example, the fixation-based ERPs, they work as we expect, but not the details. So that's a little bit odd. So that's the past, and I think we should now go a little bit towards what we are planning to do. For example, with the experiments that we have right now, or that we already recorded, but also what we are planning to do. And I can give maybe a little bit of an overview about the general goals of the Intuitive XR Labs group, which is basically threefold. So we have three major goals. The first is that we are going to create software, and we investigate methods. So we have the iXR suite already that's out there and usable on our Discord, and it's public on Git. So that's the first iteration of our real-time analysis software that we want to provide, so that our research can be actually used in game engines or other 3D applications. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a game, but it could also be other serious applications like training for, I don't know, firefighters or whatever. There are plenty of opportunities there. And what we want to do is provide the software so that these applications can work in the end without having extremely intricate knowledge of neuroscience, because that's what's holding back the field, I think, at the moment. And then the second point would be that we want to figure out applications. So really demo that these physiological measures that we have, these measures can be used to create experiences that are worth pursuing and are interesting to the users, or something like that. So they have a psychological effect maybe, or something like that. So that is the second part, that we want to really have, like, we investigate the methods, we investigate the software, or we create the software, and then we apply it in applications that are interesting. One of that example, one such example would be the Real Virtual Magic Skyrim mod, which I hope to improve a little bit more, and then also do a solid research on that. And the last goal would be to have an industry partnership where we really try to put the whole thing into market. So not necessarily like commercially successful right now, because that's unrealistic to assume, but to just make sure that we don't lose track of what's there in the real world, so that we have real issues that we are looking at, and we try to tune our research so that these issues can be solved. I don't want to make research just in the lofty skies of p-values and papers that are getting sent around, but it should be really based in what people or companies need in the end. Yeah. So with that being said, maybe we can start with Pan and your actual PhD topic now, and your ideas and goals for your PhD.
Yeah, my PhD topic is about using the physiological measurements like the EEG, eye tracking, or heart rate, and just to use them in the VR game, and make the VR game adaptive to the mental state of the players. So, so to be more specific, I will focus on classifying the intention of the players. Maybe let me make an example. So let's say in the VR game scene, there is a zombie there, and when the player see that zombie, there might be something in their brain, yeah, and also their pupil size may get larger, yeah, and of course the heart rate may increase, and all of these kind of measurements can be used to classify their so in this case it could be scaring level, or just the recognition of the target, yeah. But the general idea is to use these measurements to monitor the player's mental state, and we can in this case, we can make the weapons of the players to fire at the zombie once the intention of the player is detected. So I mean, the whole process is passive based on the player's mental state. Yeah. And the player don't need to touch the controller yeah. And we think if this kind of concept can be realized, then we can bring the experience in VR game to a higher level. Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah.
What
I
do
like the
you
fact that
mean?
you're using zombies in your examples already.
Not yet, but yeah, I think zombie is a very good example. And I saw something else on YouTube. It's also to monitor the player's scaring level and their movement. Uh, so when there are a bunch of zombies in the room, maybe let's say, and if the players really feel scared, and these zombies, they can sense their scaring level, and they will attack the player apparently, and also the player needs to keep fear. Yeah. So I think this kind of concepts are really cool. Yeah.
I think this intention to interact, essentially what you're describing here, is also something that can not only be used for gaming applications, but if we're thinking about
Yeah.
like the Apple Vision Pro, that already uses eye tracking now or soon, um, as an interface, and then you just need to click a little bit, but this idea of combining eye tracking and brain computer interface concepts, so that you can interact with the virtual user interface hands free. That is, I think, extremely powerful. If we're thinking about like 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, and people might just regularly use AR glasses in their day-to-day life, just like we are now using smartphones. Um, and that kind of truly magical interfaces could be quite enticing, I think. For that, we also have to find out good ways to measure the brain in these circumstances, right? So we need to figure out good ways to measure EEG or other cognitive or central nervous system measures, while people are just doing their stuff. So that's definitely a big step, a big hurdle to overcome. But if we find a way, and we can show that we can, for example, classify intention to interact. That is, I think that's a huge use case that we can also at some point see in the world out there. I'm pretty sure that Meta and Apple already have this on their radar.
Yeah.
We just need to be faster than Meta and Apple, which is probably easy.
Yeah.
No
And
problem.
how many years do you expect this kind of new interaction way can come to mm, reality? I mean, at least they can be popular among the VR players. So how many years do you expect?
Huh. Well, I would say probably not in this decade if we are being realistic.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know. Sometimes these things can go very fast the moment that a real use case happens. Just like with the smartphone in the beginning, it was rather slow, and for example, Nokia completely thought that it would never happen. And the moment that people realized that they can Google basically on their phone, that was the moment that when it took off, I think. So such a use case that is really compelling and really interesting could go a long way. And that is basically what we are looking for. So, but much of the stuff that we are doing is still right now still in the basic research phase. So the technology is not ready, and yeah, we'll have to see. It could be quick. It could be depends on the money that's flowing into the research, obviously as well. So that is definitely something that can be faster if we are lucky and we get some extra funding for more people that investigate software, hardware, and create new experiences and so on. But I really think this is the real step to overcome is the use case. So we have to find something that works reliably enough and is interesting so that people are willing to pay money for it, essentially. As soon as they pay money for it, businesses will start providing that. And maybe we can even be part of that business that provides it, depending on how things go.
Okay,
I
so
think,
you
yeah. Pan, you go
please.
first.
Okay, so you think the most challenging thing is the use case, but not the hardware or device. I mean, so let's say for EEG, um, the I think the most potential choice is to use the dry electrodes, right? Oh, and yeah, apparently the signal quality of the dry electrodes is really different from the gel, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe so from my side, the hardware is also a really challenging thing.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a triple hen and egg problem, right? Why would the um, so we have hardware developers, we have software developers, and we have customers, and everyone is waiting for the others to do something, because obviously the hardware developers, the hardware vendors, they don't they don't sell the devices cheaply, and there is no incentive to spend lots of money in researching extremely good, well-working dry electrodes. And that is because they know they can't sell it, not with an adequate price tag, because they would have to sell it for thousands or tens of thousands of euros if they even can make it. And then the researchers, they don't care about dry electrodes. And medicine probably also doesn't really care about dry electrodes. So the only people who would care about dry electrodes are customers. But the customers won't buy them because there's nothing to do with them.
Yeah,
So you
true.
have the developers in addition, and the developers they don't even know that it exists. Like some game developers, classically speaking, don't know that this can be done. And if they know it can be done, then they don't have the tools, right? So even like with all the knowledge that we have now, it is still difficult to classify different mental states. So that is obviously more difficult if you're just a game or not just, but if you are a game developer and not a neuroscientist, then you will just have a hard time doing something that works, and you won't create software or games or applications that uses physiological data like EEG or heart rate or anything like that, because A, it's difficult for you to do it, and B, you also know that the hardware is so expensive that you cannot sell your game in the end. So everyone is just waiting for the other parts to move first. And I think that's why the approach of the intuitive XR suite and the modding of games is a quite useful one, actually. It's a little tricky, like from a scientific perspective. It's always dangerous to go too far in the gamification route, because then you're sometimes perceived as not being serious anymore. But from a human-computer interaction perspective, I think games are perfect. Games are the ideal playground,
Yeah.
because the world already exists. Like in Skyrim, it was I don't need to create the whole story and the whole lore and the interaction and the world and the visuals and all that stuff. It already exists. I only needed to create the little extra thing with the EEG. And yes, clearly it doesn't work as well as we would wish as of now. But on the other hand, it got some traction. It got some interest from the media, from other researchers, and so on. And with that, we can move forward. We can already get some feedback from the users. We can already plan ahead what are actually the pain points that we need to solve. And with this bootstrapping, that is basically financed by the government at the moment, since we are all paid by the government. This bootstrapping might have a chance to provide compelling ideas and use cases for hardware and software developers, that they feel like this is a way to go for the future.
I think it would be also a great first step to say not going for the full EEG setup, but maybe having use cases with other physiological signals like heart rate or eye tracking, which are easier to measure and also at home easier to track, because so many people now have, I don't know, an Apple Watch or something similar to track the heart rate anyway. So we could use this data also to have some input for the game that's something different from what we are used to, like just like holding or pointing with the controllers. So I'm quite convinced that if we have a solid case there, then like if it's just like way more fun to play it when you have an extra input, then this could also support further development of more complicated signals like EEG, for example. Like what Pan said with his zombie vision, you could easily basically track it with heart rate, I guess, and also skin conductance. You don't necessarily need EEG for that, and it's just much easier if you start with this and then having also something to show, like when you're on a convention or wherever, you could just demonstrate it very quickly and everyone gets it. So that's like an opening door for further research or funding or people who want to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that we can also maybe plan for the future. if we are staying within the Skyrim universe, there's still much to do that is not necessarily based on only the cognitive readings like EEG, but that we could also already do things like with the new AI NPCs that they can have access to our heart rate and maybe know how we feel and can comment on that or things like that. Or you need to pump up your heart rate as a melee character in order to do more damage. So you really need to go into berserker mode or stuff like that. But it's a tricky approach because it can also feel tedious. So it really needs to give the player something that they want, that makes them come back to do it again, and not just try it out once. But yeah, this is something that we could definitely we will also do. For example, there's a few more Skyrim applications there. I'm also curious to hear opinions from other people. So just like ideas, what you think would be interesting ideas that you think we should implement or that could work with eye tracking and heart rate, for example, independent of brain measures, could already be interesting and also more accessible for people. So not only you two, but also from the chat or at some point people in our Discord. Feel free to send us ideas and maybe even contribute to the mod if you are if you're interested in that, because everything's open source. So it should be straightforward in general.
Nice. And maybe we should do like a survey in the Discord so that everyone can
good idea.
contribute.
Actually, that's a really good idea. We could do that like formally and have a survey with, like, we have access to lots of people, like 1,000 people. Let's say if even just 5% answer the survey, that's already 50 participants, which is a solid focus group that we could work with for an HCI paper with some ideas. And I think what we should also watch out for is fears of people that things could go wrong, or fears of privacy is also something that is legitimate, for example. So that's also something that we could look out for. Yeah, well, so there was a question already in the chat right now. The system is really intrusive. Don't you fear the usage of those by big corporations? Yeah, we were completely in sync here. Funny, yeah. So yes, this is. I think if I'm being honest, a big part of why I'm doing the research is that I want me to do it and not Meta. Or Apple, although Apple is a little bit better in terms of privacy and stuff like that. But I really hope that with the contributions that we can make, that we can educate the public about what can be done, what cannot be done, and keep like parts of the technology in our hands and not only in the hands of big corporations from the States, because I think there is a little bit of a different ethical approach in the Silicon Valley towards these kind of technologies than there is in Germany. Germany is also sometimes very annoying and very, very slow with this kind of new tech stuff, but there is a reason for that sometimes as well, because there's good reasons to first investigate before we throw things out to billions of people and see what happens in a global experiment like we have it with social media, for example. With I don't want to go into politics here, this is out of place, but I think there is an argument to be made that it's good to have these investigations done by independent researchers and make sure that the fears are addressed properly. So
I mean,
actually,
there are ways to, I don't know, for example, process everything locally so that it's not sent to a cloud or a server. So also big corporations should be enforced to do it. And that's why we also make this, or this is like, Marius, for you, very important that we talk about this publicly and also on LinkedIn and different outputs, so that also maybe in the politics they get aware what is important, where they should put regulations in place rather too early than too late, especially with this very sensitive data like your physiological data is.
yeah, I mean, that is basically the reason why we are doing this right now. We could have done that just between the three of us, but I think this is really a core aspect, a core reason why we are talking here publicly on Twitch. That these kind of fears or these kind of issues are talked openly. And there was something that I've learned a year ago or a little bit more, which I found actually quite interesting, and that is from a legal perspective, physiological data isn't really different from anything that we already have. So we already have the GDPR, like your privacy things, especially in Europe, and things that you are allowed to do, things that you're not allowed to do. And many of the fears that concern privacy can basically be answered with the fact that it's forbidden to do it. You're not allowed to use the physiological data to build like a complete model of a person, including things like their sexual orientation and stuff like that, and then sell it to a highest bidder or something like that, because that comes with all kinds of issues, things like that. But companies already do that. They already have these models of their users, and they already know all these things, their preferences and so on and so forth. And they are not allowed to do it. So the main issue, actually, the main difference with physiological data in comparison to what we already track by users online is that it's even more and even easier. So we have more information and we have easier access to the information, but it's a gradual difference. It's not a categorical difference. Privacy is already protected by law, and EEG data falls under that law. There is nothing really so special about it other than the fact that it is super easy to collect lots of very interesting information if you know what you're doing. And it could be that Meta is putting their focus on this already, or maybe not. They bought a company that uses EMG on your forearm here to control aspects of the virtual reality. They did that I don't know, 2-3 years or even more, 4 years ago already, and it hasn't become a product yet. So they are still developing it, and they are still trying also on their end to figure out, is it worth it pursuing.
Well, but you have to say, or yeah, it's just true for Europe, where we have this very strong regulations of privacy, and the EU is not even 1/10 of the world's population. So, and there are so many countries where, for example, being gay or lesbian is prosecuted, and you could, I think, easily with eye tracking or heart rate detect if someone is having the feelings for the same sex. And in those countries, this could be easily exploited. And so I think it's very much of importance that we go over the boundaries of the EU and also look at what's going on in other countries and how the technology could be also misused. Maybe there you should be really sure it's built in a safe way. So from the start.
Yeah.
Also because the big companies right now are not in the EU. So and everything from Silicon Valley, as you said, they're not so strict about the whole privacy situation as we are.
Not necessarily. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's the best thing that we can do is educate then, inform the public what can be done. I had been contemplating creating an experiment where people play the Skyrim game and the like they are doing it in the story of, well, they are playing the game and the experiment is about them about us finding out whether they like it. But actually what we're doing at the same time is measuring heart rate and eye tracking, depending, and then we could put like a few lightly clothed NPCs there from the two different sexes, in this case two, and check out what their physiological reaction to those characters is, and see like if we can classify the sexual orientation. But this is like from an ethical perspective obviously like hugely difficult and hugely problematic, and I haven't found a convincing way to do it. Like, as I used to be a member of the ethics committee in TU Berlin, and as a member of the ethics committee, I would have rejected this research. So it's very difficult to do that in an ethically sound way. But I want these kind of things are important in the sense that we shouldn't do evil for real, but we should show what can be done so that other people can be informed that you need to take care. Sometimes you might want to avoid certain options if you are in a risk group or something like that. So plans for the future, for sure, something that we should consider, especially if we want to really educate that. But it's really difficult to think about these privacy issues. If we want to prove that there is a privacy issue, we need to break it ourselves, and that is very problematic in the from an ethical perspective.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought like if you would treat everything anonymously and couldn't trace it back to the person, and also did the processing locally, that it would work.
It is, you have to, yes, but it is more sensitive in this case. It is. It would be possible potentially to do it if everything is anonymized, but then again, there are always people doing the research. Like we would do the research, and this it is going to be a more sensitive topic. Like we would have to think this through very carefully. In this case, I'm not opposing that we should do it. It could be even a student project at some point, but it is really like living on the edge. this kind of experiment. No one will care. No one cares too much about things like the Nesita, the bubble experiment that we talked about in the beginning. But if we are coming out with an experiment, publish an experiment about classifying the sexual orientation covertly without the user's knowledge, while it happens, and we can prove that we can do it in 5 minutes or even less. And we publish that, or we come out with that with, I don't know, bringing it to the press or bringing it on Twitch like that, then I'm pretty sure very quickly there will be lots of eyes on this research, and everything has to be perfectly sound. Otherwise, we will have problems.
Let's do it. Let's have a challenge.
That's a good point. Yeah, we maybe should do it. Yeah, we really maybe should consider that. We already have so many things on our plate, but this is definitely something to consider for spin-out projects for students, for example. Yeah. And for that, we would already need the application of heart rate and skin conductance, for example, in the IXR suite. So as soon as we have that, which would be part of your thesis anyways, then we can think about this. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Nice. So we haven't had too many questions, unfortunately, but I am still encouraging everyone to ask us anything. Basically, whatever you want to know about our research or about our plans. Now is the time to ask us and get a live answer. Otherwise, you will have to make do with our answers in Discord. Yeah. So, do you, the two of you, do you have anything that you think would still be very interesting to share with potential viewers and the public?
I was just thinking earlier that I wanted to point out that I think it's really great that this group really tries to approach also the industry, because I was working for 2 years also for the federal, it's not a ministry, like Federal Agency for Occupational Safety and Health. And they did really good research, like about burnout, about bullying, about like all the things that could happen to you at work and how you could prevent it, who is more at risk of it. But they never ever brought it to a company. They never ever brought it anywhere. And I was like, well, this is so, it's not stupid, but yeah, in the end, I think it's really stupid to have all this knowledge, all this experienced people. I mean, there were people working there for 30 years. They did nothing else. And I think it's your responsibility, even especially when you're paid with public money, to make sure it really gets, the knowledge really gets out there in another form than just papers. Because let's be honest, the scientific community reads them, which is good. But for the public or for the companies, doesn't really get across like what the people are focusing on and what the science is telling. And so I think it's very, very important to be as open as we possibly can about what we found out, go to companies, educate them, etc. Yeah, because this is what really in science happens a lot, that it's just staying inside the science community, which sometimes makes sense because it's too abstract. But as soon as you work in an applied field, as we do, I think it's just necessary to also approach other partners.
Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, I think that's. I'm a little bit surprised that even the federal ministry or agencies there didn't do it, because then what's the point? Like for science, you can always argue that yes, you are producing knowledge for the sake of knowledge, which is a legitimate cause, and at some point it will make its way into the public. But I would have guessed that one way to make its way into the public would be, for example, these federal agencies. So that's interesting.
Yeah, they had these brochures lying around that you could read. I think they would send it to companies, but all the people I've talked to, they're like, yeah, we're publishing our research and then we go on with the next topic. And I was like, how can you do that? You just did super interesting stuff on whatever, burnout, mobbing, stress at work. Go out and share it, and it was never really done.
Interesting.
They just did the research, which is good research, but yeah, in the end was just, yeah, maybe not only in science journals, but in some booklets which get sent to the companies, but who reads those? I don't know.
Yeah, who reads those? And then even those who read it, who puts it into action, right? So that's even more difficult, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to bring the brain computer interface into the game industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy. It's interesting there, and I think gamers are they have a tendency to be technologically open.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
True.
so that could be quite interesting and useful there.
Are you planning on bringing, what's the correct term? I guess serious games, like also games that could be potentially used for treating some conditions
Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
for, I don't know, improving your mental health or your stress management. It does not need to be a clinical condition, but like in general,
Mm.
would you like to go into this direction?
Yeah, it's a funny question because that was my initial reason to or like my initial idea what I could do with it in the end as a like when I was still thinking about if I wanted to found a company myself. Um, and this kind of stress management could be a good application, but that is tricky because you have to prove that it does something. I mean, I think you do. There are probably also people who have stress management techniques that who don't prove it like scientifically, and we don't necessarily need to do it like with a paper, but it has to work. Yeah, otherwise people will be frustrated and stop doing it. So it has to work. It has to be easy to use, and right now we are not there. So the closest thing that we could do there would be, for example, the using this demo this demo with the magic particles that flow out of the hands and blow that up into like a half an hour game and try and see if we can do some stress management technique with that. And this is actually something that I was thinking about. But in order for that to be legitimate, we have to think very carefully about what kind of um, like like how do we have to make this application such that it really does what we want it to do. And yeah, but this is definitely a thing. I don't have experience with working with clinical population. I know that is tricky, but there's for sure an interesting use case there, even for non-clinical stress management, but also for clinical stress, trauma therapy, and so on. Um, VR is already used in these circumstances and with great success. So hopefully we could contribute to that as well. This would fall in the application category essentially of our goals, like the second part. Or potentially in the third part with an industry collaboration, right? It could be that there are already companies out there that use VR for therapy or for stress management, or games that do that, and they could be interested in that. But we still have this hen and egg problem, right? So we need to make like to really prove that it is worth it spending this extra few €100 on an EEG device and not spending this money, for example, on a I don't know, meditation retreat or a spa weekend or whatever, because in the end that is what we're competing with if we're going to stress management. Yeah. So yes. but I still think that the entertainment is the easiest to get it into the hands of people, because there is no argument to be made other than it's fun. And if it is fun, then we already have like won. If it is fun enough, and it doesn't have to be useful, it just needs to be interesting and fun for entertainment. It could be
I think
useful
it's
in
very
addition.
rare for scientists to think that way. It would be, oh, it's just fun. Why should we work on it?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I say it's difficult, or it's, you have to be careful as a scientist to go too far in this direction, because like speaking these things out in conferences is risky, because then people can perceive you as being not serious. But from a human computer interaction perspective, that is the goal, right? We want to improve the interaction. We want to make it more useful and more fun, more interesting, and that's it. From a cognitive science perspective, we want to find out why it works. We want to find out which parts of the brain are working in what way, how do they interact, and so on and so forth. So that's a different kind of research, more basic research there. But yeah, I think in the end it comes down to fun. So that sounds to me like it's a good what do we say, like Schlusswort? What is that in English? A final word, but it doesn't
Final
have this the
statement? I
final
don't know.
statement.
Closing argument.
Closing statement, closing remarks. Okay, yeah. So now the closing remarks. It comes down to fun. Yeah, I think it was great that we talked about this, and I hope that it was also interesting for the audience here, for the viewers. The video will remain online on Twitch for 1 week, and I will also upload it to YouTube at some point. But I still have to manage all that and make a preparation video and so on, and then I can slowly start adding back the Twitch streams on YouTube, because Twitch doesn't allow me to keep and maintain the Twitch stream live on Twitch for more than a week, because they say it won't get watched, which is probably also not wrong. So that's a legitimate argument, but it's still good to document these things, I think. Yeah. Okay. So that was great. I hope everyone had fun while we were there, and then I hope to see you in the next IXR chat, which I think will also deal again with ethics, but I'm still in the process of managing that. In the future, we will have a more straightforward schedule for more IXR chats and streams, so that one can plan ahead more than a week. And but yeah, we're still setting everything up, so these things take time sometimes. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about publishing it as a podcast? Like if people don't show slides or
Yeah.
share their screen, then maybe it could be just on a random podcast platform.
Could be. We could do that, yeah. I have never done that, but since I'm also listening to podcasts, could very well be a good idea. I think it's nice to also have a face to the audio, but you are right. Since we don't share screens, slides, then a podcast is a good idea. Yeah, we could also think about that. Extracting the audio is easy, so yep, let's keep that in mind.
All right. It was really nice to talk to you. To like also outside the university halls, I
Yeah,
think, and outside from work, you get to different topics, which is great.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
It
Yeah.
it's a bit like the team meeting in the morning.
Yeah, we are normally so deeply into the topics that we are discussing, like on the daily matter, on the research or whatever, that it's nice to have this step back to talk about things. So yeah. Okay, I enjoyed this a lot. I am very happy that things worked out well, and I think we are also approaching the 1.5 hours mark. So that's a great way to end it for today. And I look forward to seeing everyone in the next chats.
All right. See you.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.